Alright, how's it going guys? Deekadiko's here and today I have a video for you about the best decks of this season, Gwent 10.5 patch, and best decks for every faction that you can use to climb. So yeah, I think the decks here just like has I think 60% win rate overall on Nether. I mean maybe like 55% ish. It's like positive win rate. And yeah, I think these decks are like the deck that I've encountered many times on ladder, and you know I think they're like very strong, and some of them are very easy to use as well. So yeah, starting off with scoiatel here at the top, I think the best scoiatel deck this season is actually a mix between dwarves and elves with golden echo. So yeah, essentially this deck is just bringing up all of the good scoiatel cards. For example, the Zoltan combo, Zoltan and Munro, they're just playing for a lot of value right now with Vanadane to push round 1. And also they're playing Erendite because most of the time when they have like blue coin and then they just play Vanadane round 1, you're just gonna dominate the round. And that's why they're playing Erendite, because it's like a really good value card, right? Especially if you have the tempo to get the value out of Erendite. So yeah, I don't run Decree in this deck. I mean, not Decree, I don't run Oniromancy because I think Oniromancy is just redundant. It's too much thinning for no actual purpose, because with Simlas, Vanadane, Roach, Knickers, I think the deck has enough thinning, and Brooklyn Sentinel as well. So instead I chose to play Novigrad Injustice and Royal Decree. So yeah, having Novigrad Injustice is essentially one thinning card, and we have one other thinning to play either Simlas or Vanadane if you don't have them in round 1. I mean Vanadane, I think most of the time you're just gonna use Royal Decree for Vanadane in round 1 and hope that you drew all of your combo piece in the later rounds. And yeah, we're running Vial here for the tech cards because I think if we're on the mirror, having Vial is actually really good because it actually thins the deck by 1. So yeah, it's actually really good value. So this deck actually suffers really heavily when it's not drawing its gold round 1. It's not drawing its combo. But when it does, I think this deck is very good, very good. It's even able to beat Priestess in a long run because of how much control this deck has. This deck has Erendite, this deck has a lot of damage from Simlas, a lot of ping damage from the Dwarven Chariot, Dwarven Berserker, and yeah, I think this deck is overall very solid. So one thing that I like to mention about the matchup, this deck is actually really good against like tall decks or essentially like engine decks because of we're playing a lot of control, but against decks that's I think the worst matchup for this deck is actually kind of like Unil's deck, because you're not able to get value out of your Simlas. The ping damage of these guys are not being connected properly. So I think most of the time this deck is gonna have a great time on ladder, but it suffers heavily from not drawing its combo piece. So yeah, I think this deck's worst enemy is actually its own self. It's like a classic scoiatel, where if you brick your combo piece, you're just done. But when you manage to get it, it's actually like really good. Okay, moving on to monster. So I believe the best monster deck right now is actually Vampire, because like being able to play this flatter card is actually really good. It's almost like it's being able to the ceiling on this card is actually, it's assuming you gotta bleed enemy unit for 3 bleeding every turn. This card is actually playing for 3 points a turn, 4 base. So yeah, this card is actually really good for a 6 provision card, and being able to play multiple of them is just it's just really good, especially since you have Operator, you have Necromancer's Stone, you have a bunch of cards that could Megascope that could play this card. And especially having Oriana is just actually like the card hasn't been changed. Oh wait, sorry, Oriana, this card actually has not been changed since like what, 2 years ago. So for 2 years this card stays insane as a monster card. So we're running Necrolist for this because I believe that being able to dominate round 1 is essentially like it's monster thing, right? You know, you have a lot of tempo in round 1, you have engines with flatter, being able to play Nova for carryover is actually really good. Having Erendite as a control card is actually really good because, you know, this deck doesn't really have any control, right? As you can see, we're only playing 1 lock for a control, 1 reset, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the deck is just points. And this deck does a pretty darn good job at generating a lot of points, as you can see from my videos as well. And so yeah, I've seen some people run a non-golden Necrolist of Vampire, and I think it's really good as well because, you know, we have a lot of finisher with Detlef. Detlef being able to play for like 20 points in 1 turn, that's like crazy, right? But I believe that being able to play multiple Threader, it's just really good. We don't need devotion for Vampire, even though, you know, Ancient Elder is a pretty good card. It's devotion. Even without the devotion, it's actually really good. But being able to have control with Erendite, I think is pretty huge as well. People also play, I think, this Proto Flatter could be changed to like Cursed Toad or Prince Toad, the 8th revision one. It consumes a 4 power unit, Toad Prince. But I think having one extra, like having Proto Flatter here, it gives bleeding to the deck, which synergizes really well with Flatter. Because most of the time, you're gonna use all of your leader charge in round 1 or round 2. So I think having Proto Flatter here is actually really good. So about the game plan of this deck is actually pretty simple. You just draw your operator round 1, and you have Flatter, and then you try to win round 1 with all this tempo and engine value, and then most of the time you are able to actually 2-0 your opponents, because in round 2 if you drop Necromancer's Tome and then you play a Flatter, you bring out 2 of them and you have 2 Flatter on board, like one of the most broken, I mean not broken, but one of the best bronze in the game, and then you just tempo them out of this world. Like this Flatter card is actually, it synergizes really well with Oriana too. Oriana, because, you know, if you have like what 5 bodies of Vampire on board, Oriana's gonna give initial 6 points of bleeding to a unit, and then 6 points time, like if you have 3 Flatters on board, 6 point times 3, that's like 18 points in 1 turn, plus 4 from Oriana, not to mention her own like engine value. This deck has a lot of value. I've seen some people play Gurney Core list with, you know, relics, and I think that list is actually really decent. But I think that Bloodsand Vampire Necker is actually like the best, like topping it. It's really good. So yeah, about the matchup, this deck suffers about the matchup. This deck is heavily favored against deck that, you know, you're able to win round 1 against them. And even if you don't manage to win round 1, like I think this deck is actually really good against non-removal deck, a deck that can't remove Flatter. Like this deck just preys on them. Like if they don't control Flatter, you just automatically wins the round, and then you're gonna win the game. If you know, able to draw perfectly. But this deck is actually really bad against Self Wound. Like I think the one deck that I think is really bad against this deck, I mean this deck is really bad against, is like Self Wound and Mid-Range Syndicate. Because, you know, Mid-Range Syndicate is able to clear off our engines, and we don't really have any answer for them except for Erendite, which we're always going to use on something like Horse and Freak Show or Drill. So yeah, against Mid-Range Syndicate, our engine's gonna, you know, they're just gonna perish, and we can't really do anything about it, and we lose our points. So yeah, one thing to note is just and Self Wound, of course, because we're bleeding their units. We're essentially dealing damage, but because they're Self Wound, they're like immune to damage. So yeah, we don't really have any Toll Punish either. So Sigfold, cards like Sigfold or Canute, we cannot answer them, and they're just gonna answer our engines, and we're pretty much dead. So against those decks, I recommend you to win round 1 and try to 2-0 them, because I don't think we're ever gonna win in a long round situation against them, because most of the time they're just gonna deal with our engine. So we're gonna force them to use their removal on our engine in like first or second round. and then hopefully if we manage, even if we don't manage to two of them, we're still able to bring out the point slam with Erendite in round 3. So I think that's pretty much it for monster. Let's move on to Northern Realms. Okay, so Northern Realms recently has received a lot of nerfs, especially regarding Priestess deck, and I think it's a necessary. I mean, it's not really a nerf; it's more of like a rework and more of a nerf towards Northern Realms in general, because AA got nerfed, the Siege package got nerfed, the Siege Master got nerfed. Pretty, I think you could say it's a nerf. It's like a change, but it's actually like really bad for the deck, right? Because it loses 1 point in most situation. So yeah, I think the best right now, the season just started and people are still experimenting with a lot of decks. Some people are playing Swarm NR with Quinny with Mutate Generator, like Mutate Generator, yeah, with Foltest, Blue Stripe Commandos, all those stuffs, Drug. And I'm not saying like this deck is the definitive best deck of the season, but I believe right now this deck is actually like the best NR deck you can play, even better than Priestess, because with Priestess you're essentially, if you don't, like, I think because of the recent nerf to AA and Siege Master, you're gonna have to essentially rebalance your deck around Provision, right? And most of the time, like the decks the Priestess deck that I encounter on ladder doesn't actually play good value cards like what is that? The 8 Provision Siege Engine, Foltest Pride. They don't play like essentially they're round winning cards. They don't play them anymore. They're sticking to like engine cards like Siege or Carabalista, but playing them, it's like because Siege Master got nerfed, right? They don't really have the points to contest around anymore. Like when the deck plays like Ring of Favor, sure, I have Spores right here, or I have Ring of Favor right here. We're gonna trade Ring of Favor 1 for 1, and now what, right? And I think this deck has a better engine than Traveling Priestess. So yeah, we're playing because this deck is like shield wall. We're able to shield our engines really well, like our Keldar. Keldar is actually playing a lot of value right now. It's actually insane. Like people were slipping on Keldar, but this card is actually good right now, especially in the bleeding situation where we got Adrenaline 4 first, and then we're just able to, and if the opponent doesn't answer Keldar, it's just gonna pop off, generating 2 points per turn for like the next 4 turns. So yeah, this card is actually really insane. We're playing a lot of carryovers with Fender Griefed and Sirinova. So this deck runs Dandelion too. Dandelion, I think it is a very solid like round 1 play, proactive play. You just play Dandelion, TAM, and then he's just gonna be able to generate a lot of carryovers for our deck. Most of the time you're gonna want to use Summoning Circle for Thunder Grift to pull him up from the deck essentially, and I think it's really, really good. And we're playing Windhelm of Atre. This card is actually like, people are starting to realize of how good this card is, and I'm very happy for it, because this card is actually really, really good. Like in my previous video, I said that this card is actually like Ring of Favor on budget, like a better Ring of Favor, and people are actually starting to play this card now. I'm seeing a lot of Windhelm of Atre on ladder, and I'm very happy for it. So yeah, I think the Damn Sorcerer's Immortals combo is very good. Playing Rugner is a really good finisher. Although if you don't really want to play Rugner, you could change, like balance out the provisions for, I don't know, something like Selkirk, or yeah, you could even play Visigoda, because people are playing Golden Necker, and if they don't answer Visigoda, like they play Golden Necker, and we're just like we're playing Golden Necker too, right? And then we're just gonna play for 3 points like on Visigoda, because they're playing 3 cards. And so yeah, this deck is actually really, really good. One thing I'd like to note here is that we only play 2 artifacts in the deck. So Golden Necker, we have to be really careful about pulling out our golds, about pulling out our, you know, mulliganing away the artifacts on the deck. So about the matchup for this deck, I think this deck is heavily favored against like control decks because we're playing Shield Wall. They want to control us. They have to get through our engine. They have to get through the shield. And yeah, against control decks, this deck is actually really good against Precision Strike. Although, like, you want to be wise about your leader charge and which engines you actually want to protect. For example, if you're playing Dandelion round 1 and he's about to die, it's round 1. Do you really want to use leader charge on him, or do you just want to let him die and move on with the game, right? So I think managing the leader charge on this deck is actually pretty important even against like control decks, right? This deck is actually, I think, this deck is like 50-50 matchup wise against Vampire, because with Griffin, with your adept, you could actually purify or transform the body that has a bleeding tag on it. But that said, a feather is actually feather is just a lot of points. Orion is a lot of points, and Windhelm is like it's just a battle of points, right? Essentially. So yeah, I think it's like really 50-50 matchup. Against midrange. So against midrange Syndicate, it's actually, I think it depends on whether you draw your cards or not. Because when it's usually you don't want to go to a longer round with Golden Necker deck, because you're Golden Necker, you just wanna smork. It's it's something it's hard to explain it, but I think if you like get controlled, like this is a point slam deck, right? Essentially we don't really have that much engine. We only have Dam Sorcerers. Like our engine is like a Bronze Provision engine. We don't really have that much points. And so yeah, I think against Syndicate, most of the time you're gonna want to win round 1, and because it's Syndicate. Syndicate right now is playing like the Poison Brother with Firesworn. I think it's gonna be really hard to get through them, to win round 1 against them. But yeah, I think most of the time you're gonna want to win round 1, and then bleed them or try to 2-0. Pretty much it. All right, moving on to Nilfgaard. So I believe Nilfgaard, the best deck right now is just plain old another Golden Necker deck. Yeah, I think this patch so far has been just a Golden Necker patch. You could play Golden Necker on every deck, and it's just a really, really good card. Golden Necker, Siri Nova, is it Siri Nova? The Siri Nova, and Erendite, and Ring of Favor too. Like, it's just a really, really good value. Combine it with some control from Nilfgaard, and this deck becomes really, really good, especially with the combo with Vivian and Puzzle Box. Like, people are starting to realize now that Vivian could actually destroy your 13 power token, because it's actually 0 provision cost, right? So people don't really want to click on the Vivian. So the upside of that is that you could actually play Puzzle Box to just transform your 4 provision card and get a 13 provision after that, right? It's actually really, really good. So yeah, this is actually a pretty straightforward engine. I'm running Ornate Sensor here. This list was first created by Pajabol, but I modified it a little bit. We put in Cantarella, and we put in the Illusionist and a Golden Ornate Sensor to make it more, be able to control more heavy, tall, heavy decks. And so yeah, Ornate Sensor, I think it just wins us the matchup. Because we're playing Illusionist, we could create 1 power unit on our board, just combo it with Ornate Sensor. But we have to be careful because we're playing Cantarella as well. So if we play Cantarella, we essentially want to play Ornate Sensor before we play Cantarella, right? So this deck is pretty straightforward. It's a control deck. There's really not much else to say about it. One thing I like to note here is that Invocation is actually, you want to invocate a certain stuff from opponent's your opponent's board Although you could also use it as just, you know, toll punish. But for example, against scoiatel, because most of the time they're playing Vanadane, you're not gonna have enough tempo against them, especially if they're like Golden Necker deck. I mean, not like Golden Necker, but like Erendite deck. They're playing Roach and Knickers. You're not gonna have enough tempo to compete with them. I think it's fine to just use Invocation on their Vanadane. You could use Invocation on their, because they don't really play that much toll units, right? And then you're gonna have like a 13 power unit, and that's gonna play heavily into their Ornate Sensor. You gotta be careful about that. Against monster, I think this deck is like really good because, you know, we're playing a lot of lock, we're playing a lot of toll punish, we're playing a lot of control essentially, and we have some point slam as well. So yeah, even if they bleed us, we could still you know, have our points and be fine with it because, you know, we're playing locks. Literally is our lock. Same deal against, you know, skellige. You can just lock their engine. We could steal their Melicin. We could lock their Canute. We could, you know, just like Ornate Sensor the Sigfold. It is like free. I think against skellige, if you manage to draw your cards, I think it's like a free win essentially. And so yeah, this deck actually against Syndicate, I don't think this deck is favored because of how this deck is really weird, right? Syndicate is actually really weird matchup. Most of the time you don't really want to go to a long run against Syndicate because they're just very scary overall. Their engine, their control, they have everything in a long round. And so yeah, I think most of the time you just want to, you know, you just want to bleed them, get their, you know, 5 provision tribute card out, get their golds out, bleed their golds, bleed all their value cards, and then go to a short round with, you know, your, you could probably like a Cantarella into where's the Gorther location into a Cantarella combo to get to play their one of their golds. You could play the 13 power unit from your puzzle box. So I think against Syndicate, you generally want to win round 1 and then try to bleed round 2, bleed all their golds, and then go to show round 3. So I think that's pretty much it for the matchup. Let's move on to Syndicate. Okay, with Syndicate, I think this list has been pretty much staple throughout the season. Some people are playing the Poison Brothers. Like, I think it's a really good value. But, yeah, like, you could change Tunnel Drill to... Like, some people are playing Gellert Blindheim with... Oh, where's the guy? Roland Blindheim. So these two Blindheim brothers, people really like it because it actually synergize with something like Eternal Fire Disciple. You could, you know, it's a spender, plays a lot of units on board, and then you just poison those units with Blindheim. It's a really good combo, but we're running Tunnel Drill. It's actually a more control heavy variant of the deck. You could of course also just replace it's a consideration, right, to play Tunnel Drill or Roland Blindheim. So I think, but I think the overall goals are the same. We're playing Professor, Jock, Cyrus, King of Beggars, Horson Jr., Philippi Eilhart, Muriels for Toll Punish. Philippi is actually a really good card. It's just a value card, right? Stays the same. Yeah, I think nothing much has to be said about this list. We're playing Off the Books because I think Off the Books is just the higher value leader out of the rest. And it's more flexible to use as well, right? It's easier to use. It's like auto leader ability, for example, you know, like Blood Money is just, it's an 8, like you could just use it, gain coin if it's excess damage, but you, like, you know, you have to keep count of your coins, and that's like really difficult. But with, you know, with Off the Books, you could just click your leader charge, gain coins, it's 4 charge, you know, you're only losing 1 charge, and you're fine that way. So yeah, Salamander Mage, I think it's a lot of value. Salamander Mage, Say Defender, like all this tributes synergize with each other. Tribute cards, just like really, really good value. And so yeah, with matchup, I think it's pretty straightforward. You either want to win round 1. Like, playing Roland, like, not Roland. Playing Gellert is actually a really good, it's a really good way to win round 1. Because this guy is just playing for a lot of value, combined with the Eternal Fire Disciple. But, we're losing our control because this deck doesn't really run Horse and Frick Show. Because then you're not really running Horse and Frick Show. You only have 1 Toll Punish. You have 1 control with Professor, Horson Jr., Philippa, and Morels. You don't have anything else, right? Like 1 poison package if you keep them for round 3. But yeah, that's why I chose to play Tunnel Drill here. It's just, like with this deck, with all the Golden Echo lying around, I don't think this deck has a pretty good chance of winning round 1. Even though like Eternal Fire Disciple plays for a really good value, I just don't think it's enough to win round 1, right? So yeah, with the second round, you're just gonna place Conjurer's Candle, play Tunnel Drill, boost it, and it becomes really hard to remove. If they lock it, we could use Kurt to just purify the lock, and we're playing a lot of crimes. Not a lot, but we could generate some crimes with Shady Fender, crimes with Fistak and Smuggle, and we actually generate crimes with Cyrus as well. So yeah, Kurt is Tunnel Drill actually a legitimate card in this deck. So with matchup, I think it's pretty straightforward. Most of the time, you really can't contest round 1. You get bled, try to defend the bleed, and if they don't bleed you, I think you're gonna have a great time in round 3. Honestly, just make sure that you keep tracks of your coins, and it should be you should have a great time in round 3. But yeah, and in round 2, it's pretty straightforward. I think you want to identify like what engine that you should be dealing with. For example, opponent plays 2 Necrot, brings out 2 Necrots with Necromancer's Tome. What you gonna do about it? You're just gonna spend coins with Tunnel. You don't have Kurt in hand, but you have Conjurer's Candle and Tunnel Drill. Do you want to deploy Tunnel Drill? I don't think so, because Kurt is I think you want to keep track of what engine to destroy with Tunnel Drill, and if they play the first Flatter into the round, I don't think you want to destroy. Do you want to destroy it with Tunnel Drill? I don't think so. I think you're just gonna want to use Morels on that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just knowing how to use your coins effectively is, I think, the biggest struggle to this deck, right? As it's a pretty classic Syndicate list. I really, really love it. Yeah, pretty fun to play, very strong, very solid, just a classic Syndicate thing. All right, moving on to the Lost deck. The Lost faction is actually Skellige Self-Wound. So I think with Self-Wound, it's just, I think, has the greatest matchup table for all the Skellige decks. This deck is just really good against everything, because it has a control, it has points, it has engines, it has point slam, it has everything. Literally, there's no two ways about it. The only it's been a theme for all the decks since Golden Echo got released, right? It's just that the biggest enemy of a deck is actually itself, in that you really want to draw your combo piece early, so that you really want to draw your combo piece. So it's a no-brainer that the combo with Sigfold and Knut is just really, really good. We're playing Gigni here. This is the only different card, I think, Gigni and Becker's Dark Mirror. So okay, actually there's actually a pretty there's some difference from the traditional list. We're playing Gigni, Becker's Dark Mirror, and Summoning Circle. So I'll get to Summoning Circle in a bit, but first, we're playing Gigni because I think these days there's like a lot of deck that actually plays really tall, and we don't really have any answer for that. And you know, against Vampire especially, because they're playing Necromancer Stone, they're gonna bring out their Flatter in the same row, two Flatters in the same row, getting boosted at the same time, and then you're gonna have a good time with Gigni, right? They got to like what 30 points, and then oh, we're down by like 60 points. Boom, just Gigni them. It's very nice. So yeah, that's why I put Gigni in. Gigni is actually, I think, kind of really bad against scoiatel. So I think most of the time I would just mulligan it away and prefer to, you know, just play our value cards. Like the bronze, I think is just better than Gigni against scoiatel. Like scoiatel, because scoiatel right now is actually like most of the time just control kind of faction, right? They're playing elves, they're playing the dwarf package. I mean, if they're playing dwarfs, then I will consider keeping the Gigni. I will keep the Gigni 100%, of course. What am I saying? But yeah, if we're playing against the Precision Strike Scoiatel, I think I'm just gonna mulligan the Gigni away. If we're playing against dwarfs, I'm gonna keep the Gigni. Straight as that. So, with Baker's Dark Mirror, I think this card is actually really, really good for, like, Self Wound is insanely powerful with its flexibility. You could use it on your Sigvolt, you could use it on your Melusin, or you could use it on your enemy units. Like, the card is just really, really good. It's a spell though, not an alchemy, so it's kind of like not really like it's not like Restore, where you could play it from your graveyard with Bread of the Sea, but with its flexibility on being able to use it on enemy units. So for example, you're playing a low provision like a low power card, like, you know, like Gigni, and they use like Erendite on Gigni, and then it boosts their like lowest units, and then you could just Becker's Dark Mirror their units, and then boom, you destroy the units. Good value. Yeah, this card is actually it could act as a toll punish, which I think this deck is lacking. And yeah, or you could use it on Sigvolt, and Sigvolt is gonna combo with Canoe to make it also a toll punish. Also points. Very nice. Yeah. This one buffed the Gramist. He's a 6 provision now. I think this card is really good. Actually, a 6 for 6 Purify that could purify multiple things. Very insane. Playing Lock here in case we didn't do Gramist and they somehow locked our Canute or Sigvolt. It just kind of like boost them. Simple as that. As easy as that. So yeah, I think the deck is pretty self-explanatory. Okay, let's move on to the matchup. So with Self Wound, of course, it's actually really good. Like, it's just to the point where I could say it's auto win against decks, against like Siege, Vampire, yeah, overall like damage oriented deck that cannot destroy your stuff. I think this deck is a solid auto win. Like, you just win. They can't do anything about your engine, because their engine is actually like damaging your own, damaging your like engine, this deck's engine, and this deck wants to get damaged because it's Self Wound. So yeah, I mean, you have to be careful though about playing against Siege, because I think you want to get value on your Melusin, so that they'll think that they want to heat wave your Melusin. Like, it's either like hit waving a 30 points Melusin or hit waving a 7 points Sigvolt, right? And because Sigvolt is actually really good against Siege, really good against Vampire, like, you know, make them choose whether they want to hit wave Melusin or hit wave Sigvolt or Canute. Like, we have a lot of engines that they want to hit wave. Just make sure that, you know, you don't Sigvolt is not like below 6 power, because they could just muzzle it. And yeah, again, Syndicate, you better be careful about Philippa. You don't want them to be able to answer 2 of your engines, like 2 of your tall engines. For example, they answer your Sigvolt with Moreals, and then they stole your Canute. Like, you know, like, you don't want to play into the removal, right? In a way that, you know, like if opponents vilify your Melisyn, you're pretty much screwed, because Melisyn, because they can now use your tall, yeah, really tall punish for your really tall units like Sigfold. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the best decks of the season. Like, there are some variants. I don't think this is the definitive best deck, but I think this is like pretty much a really, really good deck that you could honestly call them the best decks of each faction. Alternate deck, I think, with Scoiatel, I think it's just Dwarves. With Monster, you could play Guernicora Relic. With Northern Realms, you could play Siege. With Nilfgaard, you could play Devotion, Masquerade Ball. I think people have been experimenting with it. It's been doing kind of well. I'm not sure. Like, the Philippe van Morlham is actually a really good card, right? Because it's on deploy, it's actually able to, you know, put status on board, gets a poison if it's already like 2 status or more. I don't know yet about Ball. It might see some play later this season. I hope it will see some play. Like, Ball getting a resurgence is it's pretty interesting to see. With Syndicate, I think Syndicate has pretty much this only deck. Some people are playing Firesworn. Firesworn is doing really well in some matchup, but with its, like, it has no removal at all, so I'm not really sure about that. Like, the decks with no removal is just right? You don't really want to play them, because when all your engines get removed and you can't remove their stuffs, it just feels really bad. Some people are playing line pockets, like between off the books and line pockets. People are still like choosing which one's the best. But for now, I think the number one list is just plain old off the books Syndicate, because recently it has been receiving a lot of buffs to, you know, now having forwarded the charge, only reducing like the provision cost by 1, and all the buffs to the tribute cards like Shade Defender, the Salamander card for provision, which I think is really good. Although like King of Vigor got kind of nerfed a bit, it's kind of like changed a bit, but I think it's still like very, very solid. And lastly, Self Wound. With Self Wound, some people are playing, you know, the skellige control Golden Necker. Like, it's really good. It has a really diverse matchup that it can, like, it's really good against a lot of matchup. But, you know, as always, it's a Golden Necker deck. It's a Golden Necker deck. You can't, you know, if you don't draw your gold, so you don't draw your stuffs, you could break your stuffs, and when you do, it's gonna feel really, really bad. So yeah, it's less consistent. I mean, it's like, it's really, you can't really say definitively like it's the best or it's the worst. Same with like other decks, but I prefer to play Self Wound, and I think Self Wound just feels a lot stronger to play, even though Golden Necker is also very strong, and Devotion Warrior is actually very strong. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the video. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comments what you think of the best decks this season. And yeah, see you next time. Bye.